fourth speaker is from Greenwich Leisure, Mr. Peter Bundey. Copper Box, which was the venue for handball, as well as the Aquatics Center, will be discussed by Mr. Bundey. Mr. Bundey, please.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is a privilege to be here in Tokyo to share our experiences of the Olympic Games and the legacy. Today, I want to open the door a little bit on how we operate facilities on behalf of the Mayor of London, which is similar to TMG in Tokyo. I want to start, therefore, then to explain about my company, who is contracted to run those facilities. We are the largest operator of sport in the UK. Over 200 sports venues up and down the country, 8,000 staff, so it's a large organisation, and 40 million people visiting our facilities annually. So we have an understanding of what sport requirements are up and down the country, both in high-performance, elite venues. We have the GB Paralympic Centre at Manchester, through to local community venues. We're rather unusual for Japan in as much as that we are a charitable organisation. So we therefore exist to promote sport and to reinvest in sport. It's unique also because it's owned by the staff. The staff own the company, but they can get no profit from the company. So any surplus we make goes back into promoting sport and promoting communities and community cohesion. This means that we're able to mix profit-making sport, health and fitness activities, which generate big profits in the UK, but we use that to subsidise sports that don't make a surplus, athletics and disabled sport, and swimming in many examples. So it is a virtuous cycle where we can put back into sport to strengthen sport in the UK. Sorry. And as you can see, we operate up and down the country, from the very north down into the south of the country. And there's some interesting experiences here about spreading Olympic legacy, not just for Tokyo or London in our case, but how do we get Olympic legacy into the furthest corners of the country? How does the north of the country or the south of the country feel that the Olympics has touched them? This fantastic national event that everybody gets behind, what does it mean for them? So we have a series of programmes that spreads the Olympic legacy across the UK. And I have enjoyed this week spending time with many organisations explaining examples and giving examples of how we do that and how we spread that Olympic message. It is very important that inspiration of those athletes during the Games, as quickly as possible, are spread around the country. Our sport philosophy is very similar to your sport philosophy for Japan Sport Council, for TMG, for JOC, on the people that I've spoken to. It is about sport for all. It is about engaging everybody in sport and understanding the value and the power of sport. It is also about increasing sports participation, getting more people more active more often. Health is a big issue in the UK. Sport is now recognised, after much struggle, but it is now recognised as a major contributor to improving the health of the nation. But we also recognise that sport is about performance. It is about elite performance. It is about allowing personal best and our athletes being personal best. So we need to understand elite sport as much as we understand community sport. We need to be athlete-focused where we need to be athlete-focused. We've also introduced many new pathway schemes to get young talent to do their personal best to progress into elite sport. So what were our ambitions? The reason why I put this up is because there's two or three important elements to this. The first one is an open challenge to all the organisations in Japan. We were not Tier 1, Tier 2 or Tier 3 sponsors of the Games. But we felt as an organisation that we owed it to the nation. We had a duty to the nation to make sure that our Games was the best it could possibly be. We felt we had a responsibility to assist our Olympians and Paralympians in any way we could to be as successful as possible. And up and down the country, there will be organisations who are thinking, I'm not a tiered sponsor for these Games. Do I get involved? The message is yes. Get involved in every way you can, because not only is it national pride, not only is it about promoting Japan, or the UK in our case, Great Britain, it was good for our business. We have 8,000 staff who expected us to be part of the Games and revelled in the fact that they were part of the Games. We had 40 million customers who wanted to feel, even though they were in a small town 400 miles away from London, that the Games had come to them. It was good for business. We had a 3% increase in participation in London. We had a 6% increase in participation across the UK. So there are so many reasons why everyone in this room should encourage every organisation, private or public, to get behind the Games. We also made sure we wanted to be a legacy operator. We operate 70 venues in London already, so half of London's boroughs, metropolitan council boroughs, we operate the sports venues in. So it's important for us to be part of that legacy message. We want to get people more active, as we've discussed, and we want to target and talented youngsters and bring them through for the next generation of athletes. We also feel that beyond the 5 pillars that we talked about this morning, that we had a role to play also in economic legacy and employment schemes and social programs. So what were we doing just prior to the Games? I joined the design team for the Aquatics Centre actually in 2010, which was a couple of years too late because a lot of the decisions had already been made by then. This is not about the architectural design. The architectural design was fantastic, and we'd signed up to that. This was about how are we going to design the buildings, not just for the Olympic Games and for elite sport, but how do we design it so that we can make it relevant to the community, so that we can maximise the community use? How do we make it as flexible as possible to be able to operate, as Sydney did, a world championship in one hall and the local swimming club or the local school in the other hall? So recently we've been hosting the FINA World Diving Series, full sellout crowd, elite Olympians and sports people participating in that event, and yet we have the local school and the local kids doing their swimming lessons in the next pool. Really important that we don't neglect the community. If they feel that they can't turn up one week because there's an event, but they could turn up the next week, it's a very complicated message for us to get out to the community so they know when they can use it. So as much as possible, we want to know that even when there's a major event on, the public know they can turn up and it will be something available for them. We also support it with test events. Clearly, we operate lots of venues, so we're prepared to second our staff to LOCOG to actually help run the events, bring our technical expertise to run the events. This was at no profit to our company. We did it at cost. We wanted them to be the best games we could. We were also privileged to support the British Olympic Association in training camps. games time camps so that they could prepare to the best they could, and I'm delighted they're here today so that I can mention them. We also, though, wanted to help international countries when they came, to feel that the UK was as receptive as it could possibly be, that we could operate training camps for them to prepare as best as they could. And we know that Japan will do the same for the international Olympic organisations across the world to make sure they get the best facilities possible. But let's look at legacy management, and I want to just give you a little bit more detail about how this works contractually, because there's lots of talk about policy. Let's get underneath the detail about how we work contractually. As you're aware, we operate the London Aquatics Centre and the Copper Box Arena. Two venues which not only have a fundamental role for elite sport, but they are the two venues that have the most participants from the community. We have a partnership contract with the London Legacy Development Corporation, which is part of the Greater London Authority, which is the Mayor's Office, TMG in your case. And we have until 2024, and we have extension options then by 7 years to 2031. So we entered into a clear contract with that organisation. We also invested money into equipping the venues after transformation. One of the important things for London was to get across politically, as well as on a business case, how the facilities were being funded in legacy. Were they a cost to the nation, or were they something that could fight its corner financially? Because we operated the Copper Box Arena and the London Aquatics Centre, we were able to combine the two managements, have a good, efficient management team, market facilities effectively, maximise our revenue generation of use of both facilities, and we're able then to have an aquatic centre which runs at a subsidy. It costs money to run the aquatic centre, but we make money from the Copper Box Arena, which you'll see in a minute is an indoor dry venue. So we're able to combine the two, and then the message goes out to Londoners that these two fantastic legacy venues are run at no cost operationally to Londoners. That is very important when the discussion has been about cost for so long and how is it going to sustain. It also gives people confidence that we can look forward many years ahead, 20, 30, 40 years ahead about the legacy in the London Park. So how does it work with the London Legacy Development Corporation? How does our partnership contract work? Well, together we contract and we agree our sporting outcomes. So we agree the principles of how much elite sport we want to accommodate, how many events that we want to hold, and what sort of events do we want to hold, and how much community use do we expect to get in there. We discuss the programme of use. What time do we open in the morning? How early can people get up in the morning? And is it worth staffing it early in the morning? And how late do we finish at night? And how many events do we have where we have to contact Transport for London to arrange late trains, late subways, to stay open so that we can get people away from the Olympic Park? Very contentious issue is always activity charges as well. So we work with the LLDC to agree a range of activity charges and where we can be flexible and where do we want to subsidise. Where do we want it to be cheap for people to use it, and where do we want to charge people who can afford to pay a proper market rate. And we agree social outcomes. What are going to be our health activities? How many health intervention schemes are we going to run? What is going to be our social policy for people who are without jobs, retired people, and special groups we want to get in? Once we've agreed those outcomes, we go off and run those factors. So we contract with the national governing bodies of sport to agree their elite sports programmes. We go out then and market to the community on what programmes we run. We agree with the local clubs how many hours they can have and when do they use it. So there is a degree of flexibility in the management which is important. Even though the city owns the asset, they have brought us in to maximise the benefit of that asset and to use our experience. Interestingly, we carry the demand risk. So if people don't turn up and we lose money, our organisation would cover that. So we protect the city from lack of achievement or financial difficulty. However, because of the organisation we are and invest back into sport, we have an upside. So if we do better than we expected, then we share the profit, share the surplus with the city, and we have a fund created to reinvest back into the facilities. One of the challenges of the facilities is to keep them exciting and relevant and somewhere people want to go to. So you have to have, and Sydney is a great example of how you keep investing in those facilities. This is not a one-off spend and then leave it. This is about the necessity to reinvest back in those facilities to keep them relevant. A quick look at the London Aquatic Centre, Zaha Hadid design. You're aware of Zaha Hadid, obviously, in Tokyo. A fantastic venue, an absolutely fantastic venue which shows the world that London purposely wanted the Aquatic Centre to be a statement building. It wanted it to be a show of confidence for the Olympic Games and a show of confidence for London that we believed that we would build something that people would come and be impressed by. And it is an impressive building. And it does help attract international events. And it does help swimming want to be there. More than any other place in the UK, more than so many places in Europe, people want to be at this venue. As you would expect, during the Games, we operated all the swimming activities, synchronised swimming and diving. Water polo was in a separate temporary building, which has since been taken down. 2 50-metre pools, diving pool, dry dive facilities, technical dry dive, very, very important that the facilities that support the water is adequate enough to be able to provide for the needs of elite sport. You cannot have an elite diving programme as we've got with Great Britain's best divers if you haven't got dry dive facilities and strength and conditioning. So you must consider, in the broader sense, what is required in that building, not just for the Games, beyond the Games. They weren't needed for the Games, but that's what Legacy requires. We also put in health and fitness, because in the UK, health and fitness is the financial generator. It is a huge booming business. We make lots of money from health and fitness. But we don't want to give that lots of money to private companies that then go off and pay their shareholders. We want to take all that money and then put it into sport and social programmes. And as you can see in year one, in the first year from a standing start, these figures by any stretch are impressive. 770,000 people from no facility. So that is when people start using it, get used to it. The majority of those visits are from the community. And the importance of that is that they pay to use those facilities. So again, we're able to take from the community and use that to subsidise some of the elite use. 3,500 people on lessons already in year one. It's phenomenal. There is an interest there. The other significance of this is that no other pools have closed in London. So this is new demand that is being created. And the local community are using it as their local pool. It's quite an impressive local pool, but the kids think that is where they learn to swim with their school. And that's where they learn to swim with their swimming lessons. It's very important to have that balance between being an iconic venue for performance sport and being somewhere where people feel comfortable having to stop halfway up the 50-metre pool because it's a long way. That includes me. But we also hold major aquatic events. One of the things about London was that we set a golden series as a city, as a nation, is that we wanted 70 events between 2012 and 2016 to be of national and international significance all around the country. And one of the things that comes out of the Games is a confidence of the world in London to host major international events. And that is really, really powerful in attracting international events in the future. So we have already held several world championships. We've got the European Championships coming up, and we've held national championships for our swimming. So the event strategy is working well. We also blend high performance along with community. London and Sydney have emphasised the mix of community and elite, because there are some nations around the world which we visit which have different philosophies. They're either all for elite or all for community. One of our experiences is that we can mix the two, and they can positively coexist and support each other. The Copper Box Arena, during the Games, it was the handball arena, modern pentathlon, fencing, and in Paralympics it was the goalball venue. It's a 6,000 permanent seat indoor arena with the capacity of putting another 1,500 seats on the flat bed for several events. London was very specific that it did not require 10,000, 20,000 seats, because we have those venues already existing in London, very close to this venue. But there was a niche, an opportunity to have a capacity that met sport audiences. That meant that when you come to watch netball or basketball in the Copper Box Arena, it was full. It wasn't a half-empty 20,000 seat stadium. It was full with atmosphere. And during the Games, this venue was known as the box that rocks because of the atmosphere. 420,000 visits annually. Again, from a standing start, a fantastic performance. This was the first venue to reopen after the Games in 2013. One of the issues for the Games is that when the Games finishes, the nation is motivated. But the Olympic Park then has to go through some transformation. Because there is so much Olympic overlay, then it has to change into legacy. And people are very excited to get back in the venues. So the question is, how quick can you make that transformation? So in 2013, 1 year to the day for the opening ceremony, this venue opened. In March 2014, the Aquatic Centre opened. Sean, who spoke earlier, had his venues before the Games. So he was able again to open those quickly after the Games. We have extensive school, club and health programmes running in this venue also. So far, 150 events in the first period that we've opened, and they are mainly sporting events. This is not seen as a major music and entertainment venue. This is seen as predominantly a sporting venue with the opportunity to run music and conferences as well. We have a sprung wooden floor, which obviously needs huge protection if we are doing certain events. We've already again been successful in major sporting and world events at this venue. Again, part of that drive that the country has to make sure we are attracting the best we can get to the Olympic Park, world class in everything we can do. So we've had World Cup badminton, international basketball, world boxing and handball. But we also then want to make sure that the people that are using it, as well as the community, are of a good standard. So we have national champions in futsal based at the centre. The national champions in handball are based, men and women, at the centre. One of the leading netball clubs in the UK use the centre for its activities. So where are we at with Legacy? Well, our initial Legacy message to you is that it's a positive experience. We've already had, as you can see, over 1 million visits to that facility in the first year. We have exceeded our targets in the first... We've actually exceeded our second-year targets in year 1. So the signs for sport and community use is very positive. We have 106 doctors' surgeries already signed up to provide people who want health support into those facilities. So again, it is not just about sport, it is about doctors prescribing fitness and exercise instead of drugs and medicine. Sometimes waste lines can be reduced through exercise rather than medical intervention. Employment. 70% of everybody employed in those facilities live within 4 miles of where they work. They live in all of the surrounding boroughs to the Olympic Park. Really important to us that the Olympic Park, although it is world standard, although it was on the national stage and international stage, that the community feel it belongs to them as much as it does the country. It needs to feel like they are part of it. So employment is very important. We have found that what's been encouraging about Tokyo is that you have already embarked on early legacy thoughts, and you are already asking the difficult questions that need to be asked. Now that is good. That means that you're getting the difficult bits out early, because you have to get over those difficult questions to agree the philosophy of use, to agree the balance between elite sport and community sport, to be able to design the facilities and then manage the facilities. If you haven't asked those questions, which some previous games probably did not, then legacy has to start all over again when the games are over. We found that in the UK we can balance community use alongside elite sport. It can work sometimes that the local school is swimming in the pool and they look up and Tom Daly, who is one of our national sporting icons for diving, is diving in the pool. And I'm sure it might help some of our attendances, as he has 2 million Twitter followers, that he is sometimes training when people can see him. But having said that, when they need athlete-focused, dedicated time, they get that time. So it is a balance between the two. The other issue we found is that all generations are inspired and want to be involved in legacy. London put a lot of store in, quite rightly, this being for future generations, for the young. But we also found that the senior citizens of the UK were equally as inspired. So we had to have programmes that accommodated their new enthusiasm. And that is great that we can get those people exercising. And as I've mentioned several times, we've already demonstrated in London and across the UK that the benefit of the Olympic and Paralympic Games is that it raises the profile of the country for running major events, the ability to run well-organised and successful games, and we are very much part of that. So I'm going to leave you really just with a couple of thoughts. One is that we benefited hugely from collaboration with Sydney. We looked at Sydney and felt that was a Games that set a benchmark. So my organisation started an exchange programme with Sydney in 2008. So we would send staff to Sydney to work at the Sydney Aquatics Centre, and they would send staff to us to work at the Diamond League athletics events that we operated elsewhere in the UK. hugely important for us to upskill as much as possible. And there is an open offer to Japan that those exchange programs and collaborations should continue. And we would always be open to the idea of allowing that exchange and learning with our company and within these facilities. Secondly, there is a challenge to the nation which people don't think about at times, because we're thinking about the Games and we're thinking about long-term legacy, is that after the Games, we had 1.5 million people participating in sport regularly, more than we did before the Games in 2005. So there's 1.5 million people that want to get engaged in sport. They can only do that if all of us have created capacity. Have we got enough coaches? Are the clubs capable of taking on the new interest? Have we got the ability not just to welcome them in, but to sustain these people? And it's a big challenge. And it's a challenge felt in the north of the country and the south of the country, that we must gear up as a country to accommodate the new interest in sport. Finally then, on behalf of all of the speakers today, from a genuine feeling we've all had from the people we've discussed, is that we wish you the absolute best for your Games and your legacy. Thank you very much.
Bundey様、ありがとうございました。
Thank you very much to Mr. Bundey.